Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's video we're going to demonstrate some things that you can do to check without fancy tools to see why your saw is low on power. This video is a response to, John Davis 2720, and he put a comment on the Marketplace 51 video and he said that he's got his dad's old 365 and it seems to be down on power. And he was wondering, was that normal? And was looking for some information. So we're going to do a quick teardown. We're going to look at a few things, and with some very basic tools, you can kind of determine what's going on. Full disclosure, this is not a legit 372. This is a clone. The badging came off it. I thought it looked like shit, so I put Husqvarna badges on it because that's all I could get. This saw has been worked over a bit. It'll be worked over some more, but it's basically a 365 with a high top, so it's going to be very applicable to the 365 that John Davis is dealing with. So, first thing you can do is you can check and see if you've got a seal issue just by running the saw. So you're going to fire the saw up, get it running, lay it over on the PTO side, flip it over, lay it over on the starter side, drop it down like this here and bring it back up. And the idle should stay stable during that time. If it doesn't, it's usually indicative of a seal leak. However, it could be that it's tuned too fat on the idle and fuel is pooling up and it's sucking it up in a slug instead of in a nice atomized flow. But this is a quick check you can do without a vacuum gauge to see if you've got a seal leak. The next thing we're going to do is open up the saw, take our top cover off. This is atrocious. I'm going to blow it out quick so we don't get all that debris in the carb. I should have prepped that better. I'm going to take the air filter off. We're going to take the top cover off. Because eventually we're going to take the cylinder off of this, which doesn't take any time at all. Now, as a saw ages, you will have wear on the piston. So a saw that's running good, doesn't have a seal leak, has been maintained well its whole life, if it's got its original piston in and it's got a lot of hours on it, the ring wears. It allows the piston to rock in the bore, and eventually it wears on the piston, and you'll see evidence of that when you take the exhaust off and take a look at the piston itself. And that's normal. That's just the lifespan of a piston. It doesn't necessarily mean that the cylinder is bad. Alright, so with our top cover off, we've got easy access here to the muffler. When we get the muffler off, we're able to look at the exhaust side of the piston through the exhaust port. And it'll tell us some things about what's going on inside that cylinder. A saw that's low on power doesn't necessarily have a seal leak. You could have a scored cylinder that came about because of a seal leak or an air leak past the carburetor. But the fact that it's down on power doesn't necessarily mean that you have a trash cylinder or that you had a seal leak. And I'm not using anything fancy. This is, I think these T-handles I got from Harbor Freight, as a matter of fact. It doesn't take a lot of dollars in tools to be able to work on a chainsaw. Probably the most expensive thing is going to be a pressure vac pump so that you can check for air leaks and seal leaks. So we'll pull our muffler off and we're going to take a look at this port. This is going to be tough to see, but I'm going to do the best we can. So if we get a little light in here and we run the starter rope, we can look at the piston. And there's a little bit on this. This is a highway top end. This is a big bore highway top end. You can see we've got a little bit of wear going on the piston, but the rings don't look too bad. If I had to bet, I would say that that was caused by poor chamfering when it left the factory. I just bought this top end, put it on. I didn't do anything with it. I'm gonna blow some more debris out of this. Try to keep things clean so that it doesn't make a god-awful mess. So we're going to pull our throttle cable out, which is always just a little bit of fiddling around. We've got two buffers right here, and if you pry on the carburetor just a little bit after you get the choke rod out, she'll lift right out of there. These are just some vibration isolators for the carb itself. And we've got two screws that hold the carb together onto the intake boot. Take a little air horn off, disconnect our fuel line. And we're of course going to puke fuel because it's warm in here. And the saw's heating up. So we'll get us a hemostat. We'll just clamp that fuel line off so we don't have to deal with that nonsense. Impulse line at the back, and there's our carb off. The cable is in a holder. We free that. So this intake boot, on this saw, you can't get to the clamp unless you pull the cylinder off. So that comes out with the cylinder in this particular clamp and saw style. And I've got a bunch of wrap on my handlebar, so I have to pull the bar to get the cylinder off. Now you can take a look through the intake port before you pull the cylinder. You can do the same thing that we did on the exhaust side, and you can look and see if there's any scuffing or scratching going on over there. If we see it on the intake side, that's indicative of debris getting through, so poor filtration. If we see it on the exhaust side, that's going to be caused from overheating, which a lean condition is going to create. That could be that you tuned the saw out too lean and ran it too long like that. It could be that you've got a leak in a seal, and that's why it got lean. But when the engines run lean, they run hot. And not only do they lack lubrication when they're lean, but the heat causes everything to swell, and then bad things happen inside the close tolerances of the cylinder. So we'll pull that handlebar off. And now we're ready to pull the piston. Just that quick. Again, it doesn't take a lot of specialty stuff to do this. Now this particular saw has that highway top end kit on it. It's currently running a base gasket. If I remember right, I think the squish is 35. It's a little heavy. I've got the OE Farmer Tech cylinder, and I'm going to tear that down. Once we get the saw tore down, I'm going to do some port work on that and see how it performs stock. And then I'll compare it against this big bore. I'm interested to see the difference between a well-ported stock cylinder and a big bore. So the big bore kit obviously has a bigger piston, which is going to move slower in the jug. It'll have more weight. It takes more energy to get it to change directions. And so I think that a well-ported stock bore cylinder will deliver more performance because it'll have a lighter piston. It makes sense to me. I don't know if it will or not, but we're going to try it and we're going to see what happens because that's how you learn. So the impulse line runs through this grommet on this intake, so you got to pull that back to the side. And we are now ready to crack the cylinder off. And just like that, we get to see all of the sins. And so for an aftermarket top end kit, this doesn't look bad. The chamfering on this cylinder was not the greatest. It's had no port work done to it. We'll try to get this up to the camera in the light. Hopefully that is, you can see down in there. If we shine the light, it just washes out in the camera. It looks really bad. But that cylinder is in good serviceable condition. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no real scoring. Everything looks pretty good. We take a look at the intake side of the piston. That's perfectly acceptable. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a little bit of rubbing that's happening on there, but you're going to have that. And if we look at the exhaust side, we'll see there is a little bit. I can feel that. And if I look at this exhaust port, I'm pretty sure, yeah. Again, this is going to be really hard to see, but right here on this end, on this side of this exhaust port, the chamfering is actually pretty poor. And so that's where that damage came from. So I'll have to clean that up before we run it again. The rings themselves look okay. A little bit of damage. I can't feel it. I can see it, but I can't feel it. But there is just a little bit of scuffing on the piston. And so one of the two you're going to find. If you find an excessive amount of wear, you'll actually see it. Wear on the rings, and you know they don't. A set of rings are going to stick out proud from the piston. You have to compress these to put it back in the cylinder. If you see that, that's going to say, "Oh, I got worn rings, and life is very unhappy." But as long as you've got a good cylinder here, you most likely are looking at potentially just putting a piston in, or you've got a carburetor problem. That could also be what's going on. But looking in through that exhaust port is going to tell you everything you need to know. But one of the things that I forgot to show, and we'll do it with the 359, you can do a field check. You don't need a compression tester. Just make sure your decomp button isn't pulled and hold the saw by the recoil. And as it goes up, pushing through the compression stroke, it should just hold there and slowly sink down. If it just drops right to the ground, like there's no resistance, that's an indicator of poor compression. Without even putting a compression tester on it, you know you got a cylinder problem. But if she holds, that's an indicator that you've got decent compression and your problem may lay somewhere else. So on Reassembly, very simple as well. They sell a kit that's going to come with, I think these are less than 20 bucks. You can find these all over. Amazon. I think that Neotech clone maker, I think they throw this kit in with every saw they sell. But these are really cheap. They got different size. These are ring compressors. And if you don't know the way that works, you pick the right size. It goes around the piston. You make sure that the ring, the grooves in the ring, the opening here, lines up with the pin in the piston. That keeps the rings from spinning in a circle on the piston. You close that up so it's compressed and you work the cylinder over. And this little bar goes right over the rod and you can run that down. And then that gives you something that you can push against for reassembling the cylinder. Clean up your base gasket, put a base gasket back in it, or now's a great time to do a base gasket delete if you so choose, and just reassemble the saw. It doesn't take a lot of time to get one of these apart so you can see what's actually going on. If you got any questions, put them down in the comments. By no means am I an expert. I'm just a mechanic that enjoys chainsaws, and I'm happy to share anything I know with anybody. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned. We're going to do another test run on that Marketplace 51. I've got a different piston running in it, and I'm excited to see where the times lay on that.